Hello. Thanks for joining us today. Now for a word from Michael Agello.
Fans, countrymen, lend me your ears. No, as you know, at least this current group here, we're all into music. We're all into a particular genre of music, and Russ's dog is into music because he has to let himself know.
He went to the vet today. She's not happy.
No.
Okay. The 2016 inductees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were revealed this morning, and they were Deep Purple, Chicago, Cheap Trick, Steve Miller, and NWA. Now, I'm not going to do my usual rant on NWA because I don't think hip-hop, rap artists belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, country acts are not in
they're very influential, though. When I was in the hotel business in Richmond, Virginia, that's when I found out about them. And for me to find out about them, I was told by a few people who worked with me. So I knew about them. I'll give them some credit. I have to give them credit.
That's an old quibble of mine, but I'll drop that. And I have nothing against the four people or groups that were inducted. I think.
I do. Steve Miller's a hack as a guitarist.
Okay, but
he's a total hack.
Steve Miller is
Come on.
But Deep Purple, I think, has been long and deserving, and so is Chicago.
Yes.
My problem is that the hypocrites at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame once again have avoided an entire genre of music in progressive rock. And, arguably, we only have 3 bands, if you consider Pink Floyd a progressive rock band. I know some people consider the Beatles a progressive rock band, but I think they're...
Beatles aren't, but Pink Floyd is.
Right, they sort of stretch the genres. I mean, some people think that... But,
they dabbled in it.
Right, but Pink Floyd, Genesis, and Rush are the only 3 bands that you could consider progressive rock in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And once again, for the second year in a row, they have not inducted Yes. Now, I think eventually they will because they've nominated them 2 years in a row. But it is disgraceful that King Crimson, that Jethro Tull, that the Moody Blues, if you want to consider them progressive, that's sort of maybe not. But there are at least 5 or 6 progressive rock bands that have not even been nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the one thing I'm concerned about, Russ, is that starting next year, you're going to start to get the bands from the early 90s. Nirvana is already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they had a release in the late 80s.
Right.
Pearl Jam was eligible this year, and I don't think they got nominated, but I think they will probably next year. And you'll have Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots, and I think they're all deserving. But them being included in the mix will make that more few spots available for bands like Yes and Jethro Tull to even get nominated.
Yeah, this is just getting stupid. Like, they had Yes there for a meet and greet while Chris Squire was alive a couple of years ago, and everybody was thinking, all right, now they finally have figured it out, and they're going to put him in. And they didn't. They just had him there so they can make money, because Yes still makes money.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a big fan of the group that is currently Yes, we know about that. I'm not going to get into that. Everybody needs to be celebrated. They need to be in. And like I said, if a hack guitarist like Steve Miller gets in, it makes me sick. Even though Yes did go commercial for a couple songs, they had never made a piece of garbage like Abracadabra. That's all I have to say.
And
well, even Steve Miller's best songs are not I mean, even the what you would
Eagle or but even Eck and I were just talking before you came online, Russ. It was bands, bands like Genesis, bands like Yes, even bands like Rush. After a while, they sort of got tired of the progressive rock, of the long songs, and they went into shorter rock songs and even pop songs. So that ability to be diversified and show range, it should even be more of a case of them having a case to make the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it doesn't seem to help. So they have something. They have a bee in their bonnet against progressive rock bands, and all I have to say is you won't get one freaking red cent of my money and a lot of people's money until you let progressive rock bands in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. End of speech.
Yeah, all that saying, I was happy for Cheap Trick. I love Cheap Trick. I actually know somebody, believe it or not, Vic Hatfield's daughter is related to Robin, the lead singer. There's a family relation there. Not anymore because there was a divorce, but she was. And he's a great guy. They're a great band. I've seen Deep Purple. I've seen Chicago. I'm happy for all of them. That's it.
Yeah, no, I mean, Deep Purple, hugely influential a band. You know, Ian Gillan too. I mean, you know.
I hope they have a stage big enough for Richie Blackmore's head.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's no question. I mean, and Cheap Trick, enormously influential band. Probably, you know, probably one of the pillar bands actually for a lot of people.
I mean, I like Cheap Trick a lot, but you know, the funny thing is, I gained a lot more respect for them in recent years in watching some of the documentary footage of the Foo Fighters putting together their last album. That Rick Nielsen came into the studio and provided some guitar. And I mean, I always thought he was a good guitar player, but just I mean, just incredible sound that comes out of his guitar. I mean, very underrated. I mean, I'm not putting him up in on Mount Rushmore with Clapton or Hendrix, but
but he was a quirky, really cool guitarist.
Yes.
But yeah, I still have, believe it or not, I Want You to Want Me and Surrender from Live at Budokan on my iPod. Like, those are just classics.
Yep, me too.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, there's. You know, and I mean, and Chicago, obviously, Chicago, right?
Chicago,
I mean,
yes, they did. Did they get too poppy after a while? Sure.
It's how you listen. I mean, that whole pop thing. You guys are sounding a little prog rock snobbish there a little bit. I mean, that's like.
I liked Chicago until Peter Cetera left. Then I really didn't have any use for him.
Right. I mean,
Well,
I can take just so much of Hard Habit to Break or any of their like 80s.
That was their last great album, though, and even though it was very poppy, it was still very good. It was.
Yeah, my Chicago is the Chicago Transit Authority. Is Terry Kath is 25 or 6 to 4.
Yeah, that double CD. I have that double CD set of the Chicago Transit Authority. Yeah. Highly recommend it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's great stuff. I mean, they do great stuff, and you know, and I kind of look at like the later Chicago stuff, like the Peter Cetera, like Hard to Say I'm Sorry, Chicago.
Right.
Very similar to like the Phil Collins solo albums. You know, like they're great music, great songs. They are definitely more accessible to mainstream people.
There's another thing there. It's like, okay, you know, Peter Gabriel has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo act, as well as a member of Genesis, and Phil Collins' career I know, you know, the thing is, he's a pop star. He was a pop star as a solo artist. So
yeah, but Phil's got a lot of people who look at him like he's a sellout. Phil's got in the rock world. You know, Phil's never going to be as cool as Peter was, you know, ever. I mean, so you're always going to put him up against Peter because he replaced Peter in Genesis, and even though Phil Collins has done way enough on his own to justify no connection at all to Peter Gabriel or Genesis. Because he's as a solo artist should be in the Hall of Fame.
He did a great book too on the Civil War. I was trying to get an interview with him about it. He owns tons of, I believe it's the Civil War memorabilia too.
The Alamo.
The Alamo. That's what it is.
Really into the Alamo.
And he owns tons of memorabilia from it.
Yeah, he's donated it already. I think he's donated it to a museum.
That's pretty wild. That's cool.
No, I mean, and he's but there's Phil didn't care what people thought of him, and he's, Peter's a little bit more not like that, I mean, Peter, my idol growing up, Peter Gabriel, definitely, no question about it. Like that, if there's one artist I could, take on Desert Island music with, that would be Peter Gabriel. But yeah, I mean, Phil just didn't care if he got corny, and didn't care.
The funny thing was, and the last thing on this, and then we'll get into hockey, but. He was interviewed by Michael Kay on the Yes Network for his interview show a couple years ago, and he basically said something to the effect of, between like 1987 and 1995, if I met you, I apologize. meaning that he was an egomaniac at that time and probably insulted a lot of people. So I think he realizes in his he's in his 60s now, that maybe he was a little less friendly than he should have been.
Well, he went through a pretty crazy era of success at that point, though. I mean, as much as you can say he's an egomaniac, I mean, songs like One More Night, which was all of our prom themes at some point.
It was my senior prom song.
Yeah, it was everybody's prom theme, I think.
Against All Odds, Take a Look at Me Now.
Yeah, Against All Odds, yeah. I mean, those are hugely influential songs, and big songs, and just great ballads. You know, it's funny because I was going through a little last thing we'll say on music. This service I was talking about the other day called Quello, which is on Apple TV.
You find all these random services. You do.
I know. I pay $3.99 a month to way too many people, Russ.
You really do.
This is another one, right? So Quello is like a Netflix for concerts videos. And it's really cool. It's got a ton of great stuff on it. And I talked the other day how I watched the Miley Cyrus concert, which I thought was like was way better. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But
was she licking a sledgehammer in that concert?
I will tell you what, okay? I'm just going to throw this out there because I know a lot of our, you guys you might not relate to this or not, because there's this whole other world that I'm part of because I have a 13-year-old daughter, so I get to hear this kind of music.
Right.
Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, all the other Disney artists, basically like Selena Gomez or Ariana Grande, these people who are just, I mean, Miley is totally different than that group, and she is absolutely a real musician. Like, there's no getting around that. And she has no question gone off the deep end. But like she said, if you had only known this part of me, it was kind of interesting because it was with an interview throughout the songs. If you'd only known this part of me, you would say I was Lady Gaga, and you would be like, oh, she's just weird. She says, but unfortunately, you saw me as an actress in the Hannah Montana thing, so therefore I can't do this. But this is really what I want to do. I could respect that because
I do respect that.
It makes sense. It's like, okay, so she was stuck in the Disney. I mean, dude made a lot of money, and to be stuck in Disney is not the worst thing in the world. But this is her. This
more
is
of an artist than Selena Gomez. I'll give her.
Oh
that.
yeah, no, there's no two ways about it. Plus, the girl can flat out sing and perform. I mean, when you watch her do this stuff, you realize like she does. The song Hey Ya, which is Hey Ya.
Oh yeah.
She look it up on YouTube. Hey Ya and Jolene, which is an really old classic.
Dolly Parton, Paul Cole.
Right. Dolly Parton's Jolene. In the middle of her set of all this craziness, she does a cover of those two songs, one into the other, and I'm telling you what, she just rocks the ass off of Jolene. I mean, Jolene is just like, you're like, this girl can absolutely bring it. Like, this is real country singing to a real country music song, and she's totally not gonna. And Hey Ya does the coolest version. And the other thing I can say about her, and I know a friend who went to see her live and just by accident, went to see her, which was really funny. But that she is so connected with her audience, it's crazy. Like, when you watch the live show, like, for whatever it's worth, the people in her audience are just getting it completely, and it's just crazy. So I mean, I've been to these Disney things. I've been to I've had the unfortune of seeing a Selena Gomez concert live, and I can tell you that this is just not the case. It's a different world. So
other than
it being country, I'd be fine with it.
I mean.
There should be ratings on commercials, because I saw a commercial on TV yesterday with Selena Gomez for.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, you see these Disney people, they all rebel.
The bra and panties, and like it's a Beats commercial. I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, she was with Justin Bieber for a long time, right? Which is with Justin Bieber, like I've always said, is what happens when someone grows up in Canada watching too much Caillou, And that's Justin Bieber to me. So anyway,
I just saw there was a documentary on Access about Bryan Adams on this last tour, and he did a duet with Justin Bieber. It was kind of interesting.
Well, again, I mean, there's no question that Justin Bieber's talented. I mean, it's like you don't get to that point. I don't care if you hate music or not without being talented. Like without connecting to someone, they're not connecting to us. They're like talking a different language than we speak, but they're connecting to people. There are people out there who are getting it. And that's the same thing with rap music. And like I said, this Hamilton musical, which I'm sure, which I'm still obsessed with.
By the way, Bryan Adams is the largest selling Canadian artist of all time. And I questioned it. I was like, first person who came to my mind was Neil Young. But believe it or not, Bryan Adams has sold 100 million and Neil Young sold 79. It's because of the movie soundtracks that has put Bryan Adams over the top.
I Did It For You, the Robin Hood song. Boosted him. That thing sold 20 million on its own, probably.
Yeah, that's the difference right there.
And that song, really passive aggressive. If you listen to the words,
it is passive aggressive.
I mean, it really is not. If you actually said that if you actually wrote a love poem to your wife with those words, she'd be like, "What the hell are you
get a restraining order."
Yeah, she'd be like, "What's wrong with you?
What are you trying to say here?" Like, it's really.
It's true.
Anyway, let's move on.
Let's save this till tomorrow when we have time here. Let's go.
I know. We only have rest till 1:30 today. Okay, here we go. And I'm out of here 1:45. So we're gonna start the show. Sorry if we started early. We screw you guys to say we always started late today. By the way, anyway, we're starting at 1:00 exactly with the actual show.
Shazam!
I can't tell you the amount of people who come in. I'm sorry, real quick. I can't tell you the amount of people who tell me that they watch it for the beginning of the show and then turn it off. I've had so many people say it. I'm like, what? Like especially my neighbors, like the guy who lives right over there, which is hopefully you're watching today if you are, but he watches all the time. Like the other day, he's like, "Did you ever get your dogs back?" Like I was like talking about how I didn't get my. I'm like, yeah, and it took me for a while to figure out that he was watching the show. But yeah, no, he's a great guy. There's the wonderful couple there. Like this is the guy I want to be when I grow up because he's all techie and geeky and everything. But so yeah, this is really really funny. So there are people who just watched the beginning of the show, but you missed it today. You have to go back to join us earlier. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, December 17th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday in the afternoon, Eastern Time. And the reason I know the date today, why is that, you ask? Because you know what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah, me too.
Don't even go there.
Me too.
I'm going there, and I'm going there with a whole group of people.
Okay.
I'm just going with my wife, but I've already threatened people on Twitter and on Facebook that if you pissed me off in the last year, I might just put a spoiler on your wall.
Right. Yes,
Russ,
that's right. It's Star Wars Day, and
Russ, I honestly, I want you to tell me what happens because I'm going to release it to the world on the webcast.
No, you're the wrong person. I would never give you that kind of information. No one tell Mike what happens. Okay.
I will not tell Mike. I won't.
I am so fired up about this.
Me too.
I mean, so what we've done over the past.
I bought these tickets like over a month ago.
Oh, I know. Did you buy them during the Eagles game, like the Monday night game?
When the website went down, yeah.
Yep,
I'm not saying I'm going to spoil it for you guys. I'm just going to spoil it for Disney so they don't make $1 billion on it.
They're gonna anyhow.
They already have. I mean, my God, the ticket sales are already probably the most popular movie of all time. I bet you before it even starts.
It is.
It's going to be, and it's insane. So what we've done in our family here, we've had some family. I appreciate you guys filling in the last couple of days. My son had some health issues. Everything seems to be okay. We're waiting for some results still on Friday. So, but anyway,
have each other's back. It's good.
Thank you. I appreciate it really much. It's great, guys. So what we were doing, because I was trying to keep him, less stressed and just relaxing more, because he's 10. He's a huge Star Wars fan. Is we were watching all of the other movies, So. We watched them all last night, finishing up with Return of the Jedi, and at the end of it. So there's so many cool things because and this is just let Russ and I geek for a second, Mike. So here's the thing. So in the one trailer, and I haven't seen anything about the spoilers. I've been staying off this, so I'm saying this completely just his theory, which I liked. Okay. In the one trailer, you see the Kylo Ren, who's the new Darth Vader, holding Darth Vader's mask, or whatever, and saying, I'll do something. And that's the whole trailer. It's really cool. And we were noted that at the end of Return of the Jedi, who's with the mask is Luke Skywalker. So we're the whole thing is completely so we're we're going off on everything. So although Luke, I did hear came out and said he wasn't then, but there's a whole bunch of things, but I think that they could be lying. Because this is my theory. If you're J.J. Abrams, you are just throwing out all kinds of wrong stuff. Like if I had this movie, I would have been just blanketing the internet with false spoilers. I would have been completely lying to everybody.
Maybe Disney didn't want him to do that. I have two theories, two quick ones. The first one is I think they're either going to show the planet that Jar Jar Binks is from or show Jar Jar for a minute just to annoy people. I think that's going to happen.
It would be great.
And then the other one is
assassinate Jar Jar Binks.
Now this is what I would like to see happen, but it's not going to happen. Now I do a show with Anthony, and he sits next to me at a lot of Flyers games. I said I would love to see the Millennium Falcon just take a nosedive and just get blown up because it's always been like that bucket of bolts. And he almost, he got very sad. He basically, to paraphrase him, said that would be like his childhood going up in flames.
How could you blow up the Millennium Falcon? I know.
Because I want to see some change. I mean, that's why.
I agree. No, that's really cool. I do have a feeling like this will be the last time we see some of these characters.
Right. So maybe that would be it. You have Han Solo drive the Millennium Falcon, and it finally gives out on him, and it crashes and burns. That's
like a suicide mission or something like that.
Yeah.
No, that would be. That's
Well,
going to be very interesting. It's a Disney film, okay? So someone's parent is going to die. Okay,
well,
you have to know that.
There will be a fire.
Someone's parent has to die because it's a Disney film, and that's the law. So I
Right.
mean, it's the Bambi factor, and it just continues through Nemo and everything else.
Everything.
honestly, I don't see Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher signing up for another one, so I think that's plausible.
No, I think they're transitional characters. I bet you they're not big characters in this thing. I think they're transitional characters to kind of like connect the back, and then they'll be gone. You're right. I mean, whether or not they're, I hope they're not killed, but it would be kind of a weird. It is a PG-13 rating, though.
The only way we can bring this back to hockey is for all the Star Wars nights they've been having.
Please.
Let's do it. All right. So anyway, it also is a week from Christmas Eve. So hey, there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of stuff going on today. So let's start with Man, I'm so I've been just crazy.
Well, we should say that the trade freeze is December the 19th, which is Saturday.
Right, and yet we have seen Mike and I did last show Mike and I did on Monday, which was really funny. We talked about how there hadn't been any trades, there weren't going and literally the trade started, right?
Yep.
And yesterday I texted you guys with the whole Scotty Hartnell thing, which I still am hearing is a possibility out there. I would keep, there's certain teams you definitely want to keep an eye on right now as we're going into the trade freeze. One of them being Florida. I've heard a lot of stuff coming on from there, and I don't know what they're interested in.
Ryan Johansson, you pretty much have to keep an eye out on that now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, who's more likely to stay with their team next year, Ryan Johansson or Steven Stamkos? So, that's a question you have to ask yourself.
It could be none of them, but I would say Stamkos more than Johansson.
Yeah, but I think that's about 5% as opposed to 1%, because I get the feeling that if you're going to have a major, franchise player type player moved before February 29th, that it's going to be Ryan Johansson. Stamkos, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would think Vancouver would have heavy interest in him because he's from that area. He played in the BCHL. He'd be very comfortable there.
Yeah.
I think that's a good fit right there.
Yeah, but Vancouver would have to give up probably one or two of those young, good players.
But I think they would.
Yeah.
Do you think Jarmo Kekalainen is in trouble, Russ?
I don't think he's in trouble, but he's in that spot where they're a budget team, and he's drafted very well in the last 2 years, but he's having trouble holding on to his stars. Rick Nash left. Now it seems like Johansson could be on the way out. Mm-hmm. Bobrovsky's not a huge star, but he's going to be the next biggest name on that team. I mean, the history of the Blue Jackets, they've not really paid players. Savard is one guy that they paid, but they generally don't pay these guys, and I think they're having trouble holding on to stars as a result.
They paid Rick Nash, right?
But they didn't
pay him, and they traded him.
But they didn't pay Savard a ton. They paid him much, but they didn't pay him a ton.
No.
They didn't. I mean, they paid Brandon Saad. They paid Nick Foligno.
Well, I think in a way, I think what's interesting is Jarmo did a good job at not signing, this anomaly to a longer contract. I mean, this guy, they signed a short deal. It was a contentious negotiation,
right?
And they did it for a reason because he has had a history. As good as Ryan Johansson is, as much as he's this rare commodity of this big giant center that we all want, right? As good as he is, he has had a history of not showing up at times, and one of the things that really I know personally, I've talked to people that rubbed them the wrong way through this whole thing is that a few years ago, in one of Ryan Johansson's first seasons with the Blue Jackets, it might have been his rookie year even, the Jackets were out of the playoffs, of course, and their farm team, their AHL team, went pretty far, and they sent Johansson down to play in a 7-game series. He had 1 point in the 7 games. Barely showed up, had 2 shots in 7 games. I mean, this was like a star player playing in the AHL who was just pissed off to be sent to the AHL, even though he was young enough to go there, and they just wanted him to keep playing and play some more hockey, because they were out of the playoffs.
He's a 19-year-old, right? I mean,
right. But I mean, he goes to the AHL and does, and when him coming up small in the AHL, I'm telling you, had a lasting impact on them. That really, it really made them question a lot of stuff.
And I really think what is at the heart of this situation in Columbus is the fact that Johansson, I believe, is an RFA at the end of this year. I'm not 100% sure, and I'll check as I'm talking here. But he's on a bridge deal, and he's only making $4 million. He's an RFA after the end of next year.
Right.
They know that what's next on the agenda for him is that long-term 7-8 year deal at big money.
Right.
I don't know if they want to pay him that because they're not sure about this guy's character or his ability to play at both ends of the ice. Now, Russ and I talked about this yesterday. They are not going to pay somebody $8-9 million unless he buys in at both ends of the ice. If he's just an offensive player, I think that mitigates his value, and they won't want to pay that kind of money. And I think what they brought in Tortorella for is to sort of break him, is to sort of like you've got to play our style of hockey. Otherwise, you're not worth what you're asking for. And I think that what they will do is they will trade him before the deadline or over the summer with 1 year left at $4 million and let some other team pay him the big money. Because
and remember, Vancouver's got the Sedins coming off the books in a year.
Right. It makes total sense. I mean, and it is another kind of. He seems like a Canuck type player because it's the kind of player Canucks fans will absolutely get crazy.
Get behind him, absolutely.
Yeah. And will grow to hate him. I mean, it's like the perfect. It's the kind of player the Canucks. They will get behind him 100%, and they will have issues with him because he is. This is not a new type. This is like a Luongo type player. I think for them that they're going to be like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is terrible. He's going to be very,
it could
dividing.
Be split, but I think the points will win him over. I think we're still talking about a really young player here, and I don't think we've seen his best. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind here.
I just checked. The Sedins have 2 more years after.
2 more years? Okay.
So it overlaps, and that's $14 million between the two of them. So it might be a tough squeeze for them.
Okay.
Is the Tortorella experiment working?
No.
I don't think so either.
Well,
he's a game over 500 as of yesterday. We looked it up.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. I honestly, I think they're getting what they wanted out of him, which is stability. But he also, and to Russ's point, where
is the stability that you're talking about? I don't see.
I mean, they've won 11 games since they hired him. I mean, this was a team that was 0-9, and now they're.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, they've gotten some wins, but would you call them stable?
Well, I'm talking about the fact that they're getting. Up until the fact that Bobrovsky, when Bobrovsky got hurt, I thought they had turned things around. This situation with Johansson has overwhelmed things. Has been the dominant story. I mean, I know people talked about Brandon Saad being put on the 4th line, but and that was for a game. What Tortorella is doing is he's basically putting in place a meritocracy. You play the way I want you to play, and you're going to play, and I'm going to depend on you. If you don't, then sit your ass up in the press box, or you're going to play 9 minutes. I don't mind that in a coach. Now, he has some communication issues, obviously. He presses wrong buttons sometimes, but I think that this is the kind of coach they needed at this time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, it's funny. I think he's on the cusp of being archaic, and I think the same thing with John Davidson, and I think that's why they reached out to him. They have a friendship, and I think that kind of thinking is sort of archaic in these days. Look, for a 1-game benching for a guy, or want to play him on the 4th line, that's fine. But when you start going down the list, all right, Hartnell, I'm going to bench you. Okay, him, I'm going to bench you. All right, you, I'm going to bench you. All right, you're not going to play at all. It's like that's not helping the team. It's not.
It's not. I agree with you. It feels like it feels like it's one thing to be a legitimate hard ass, and then it's another thing to be like a real put on. Like this feels very, very, very fake. It feels like a fake hard assness to me. Like it's not a real hard ass. It's a fake hard ass. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean the guy could coach, but he still hasn't taken this part out of his game, and I think until he does, he's not going to win a Stanley Cup with today's players.
I've never seen a soft hard ass before.
Yeah, that would be the title of today's show: Real versus Fake Hard Ass.
But there's another hot mess out there.
Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
And it's the Pittsburgh Penguins, and their fans are getting pretty fed up. And I don't like to have to sort of denigrate a coach or a GM or anybody really, but we have to, right? In the position we're in, and right now Mike Sullivan's been put in a very tough spot because he is a GM now that is just wheeling and dealing and just really just kind of going for it to do anything to change the situation. But like when you trade Scuderi for Daly, you didn't help your team. You really didn't. You didn't add any defense at all. You may have gotten a little faster, and you may have gotten a little puck moving. And between that and the bad roster construction and the lack of defense and the money that they've spent on the cap and the Perron deal, I thought at the beginning that might have been okay. That's a disaster. all these things point to Jim Rutherford. Until he's gone, this might be a sinking ship.
Well, I think first of all, I think that the Daly Scuderi deal was good for both teams in the sense that they needed a puck mover, they got it, and Chicago got themselves a third pairing guy at cheap money. That probably.
Chicago. I don't think it was good for Pittsburgh.
Well, I agree
with that.
Well, I think Daly can move the puck and play better than Scuderi could.
No, he's not. He's not. Daly is a different kind of player. I mean, he is good if you have the ability to have him as like a luxury item on
like
your
a rover,
in your defense. Like he's Michael Del Zotto or whatever. He's not that bad defensively.
Del Zotto's better defensively than him now.
Yeah, right now he is. But there's a reason. I mean, there's a reason that they went to Oduya in Dallas and let him go. And and the fact of the matter, he really just accentuates the issues in Pittsburgh to me. Like Scuderi. The one thing you could say about Scuderi is like here is a legitimate veteran who has like a great locker room presence, who is one of these guys who might not be able to play as much as he used to be able to play, but hell, he's respected. He's won Stanley Cups in different places.
Well, okay. I mean.
And by the way, Daniel Sprong yesterday played like just over 7 minutes. So even that situation hasn't improved either.
Right.
They were playing Scuderi 17 minutes a night. They were overplaying him. It exposes his lack of mobility.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Chicago because
they need that kind of player. And that's the crazy thing about it. They played him more because that's the kind of player they want on the ice. They got rid of one of those now.
They played him more because they had nobody else to play. That was the problem. They want to play Brian Dumoulin 18 minutes. They didn't want to play
that with Daly though.
Eck is right. They didn't do anything to fix it. Instead, they went for the big name in Kessel. They got the fans excited and said, "Look at all this offense we're going to have." And now that there is no offense, now they've got.
Honestly, they'd be better off with Luke Shen.
Well, no, I was talking specifically about the Daly deal. But the one thing
I would have gotten Luke Shen instead of Daly, like I'm saying. They could have gotten Luke Shen without moving Scuderi. They could have made that happen.
Not going to trade Luke Shen to Pittsburgh. They're not going to trade him inside.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either. Okay.
Not right now. I mean, this Flyers team, they're not looking at it like they're going to have to play. But I mean, Luke Shen's gone after this year.
Right.
He's a UFA, and they're not looking at it like they're a playoff team. So sure.
Well,
they get a third-round pick that Luke Shen would have been in Pittsburgh. They would have driven him to Pittsburgh.
The one thing I can say is watching that game last night, I've never seen a more talented yet having such a lack of energy, lack of compete at all. I mean, Boston ran roughshod over Pittsburgh. I barely noticed Crosby. I barely noticed Malkin.
He probably got an injury. I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt and say he's probably got an injury, and I'm even going to leave Crosby out of it. But for the rest of the team, it's like, look, at the end of the day, with this GM in there, he is going to bankrupt this team of every prospect they have to try and make the playoffs. That's what he's going to do.
You're right, and the problem started when they gave Rutherford the job, and they basically let everybody know this was a temporary thing. Like they said, he's coming in to temporarily be our general manager.
From retirement. It's obvious.
Right.
So remember, it was 2 years. This is after this year. Is he gone? I mean, this is.
I think he is.
Yeah. The heir apparent is probably already in the organization. It's not Fitzgerald anymore. I think he joined. Ray Shero in New Jersey, but whoever
is going to be left with the heir apparent. That's the problem.
I think I just figured it out. Okay, so this is the Penguins. This is my analogy I'm going to make because Russ is on the show for the next couple of minutes here, and I want to make this analogy with Russ before he has to go because this, to me, is what the Penguins are. The Penguins are a prospect that was rushed.
Yeah.
The Penguins team in general, the holistic of the team, and they had success early, and they got in there, and things got better. But at the end of the day, they did not learn how to play right. They did not learn the right way to play this. And now, as they mature, they are in trouble because this is a team that they successful way too quickly.
It started to whittle away. Like, Brooks Orpik was important to them. Brooks Orpik isn't there. Marian Hossa was important to them for that one season because he played defense. When he went away, it changed. It's been whittling away for like the last 3 years as far as their effectiveness to the point now where they're struggling to be a playoff team. And we did talk about them at the beginning of the season, and we weren't sure if they were a playoff team.
Right.
But they have to look. They have to. There is a longer arc that's never been examined in Pittsburgh. It's always been we got to win right now. I mean, it
Right.
goes back to them firing Terrian when he gets to the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean,
Right.
they've always had, and I'm a fan of that move, but I'm just saying that they did that and they had to do it. So then they bring in Baalsma, which works for a while, and then they let Shiro go and Baalsma go in really the weirdest way possible, and don't have a GM to replace him. So instead, go for a quick fix general manager, which you can't really do. I mean, general manager is about
Well,
general managers get fired, and you feel terrible because the things they're putting in place they haven't even seen yet before they get fired.
But the general manager and his MO matches the team and matches the roster right now, as we've said, and as I said after the Kessel trade. That team has a limited window of 2, 3, maybe at the absolute latest 4 years to win with the group that they have right now, and they're probably not going to. This was the mistake.
Look at the team he left. How's Carolina? They're starting to get a few more prospects. They're starting to get better. They're years
away,
from
right?
being better.
Plus, I agree.
Turn into Carolina. They're turning into them.
I agree. Any general manager who signs Alexander Semin at $7 million a year should be taken out to a wall and shot. Not literally, but figuratively. I'm
just saying, but this is like he did that to Carolina. Carolina is what it is, and now Pittsburgh's turning into Carolina.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's fair to say it, and it's not. I mean, what I don't understand, Mike, and I'm going to disagree with you for a second, is the window. I mean, the window on Pittsburgh is really not 2 years.
No, it's not.
They honestly have young players on that team that and Crosby can still be successful in the NHL for another 5 to 10 years. Malkin can still be successful for another 5 to 10 years, right?
Fleury the same way. Even Letang the same. 5 more years, maybe.
Right. It's not like Crosby is 35. He's
but we're talking about their peak value in their prime. And we're also talking about monetary. We're talking about the money they make as opposed to what they contribute on the ice.
Right, monetarily, they're getting paid like this is it. But at the same time, I don't think this is it. I mean, I think that this Penguins team needs to just take a breath and realize that they
reboot. They need to figure out. We need to reboot for a couple of years.
And they have a good start. They have a couple players that are pretty awesome to have in their reboot. So why not just relax with it?
Well, no, because they would be throwing away prime years of Crosby and Malkin if they
right. That's the argument.
And that's what I'm saying. They're not going to throw away $17 million of salary to pay Crosby and Malkin to stay around to rebuild. They're in the situation that the Toronto Maple Leafs were in the last 6 or 7 years, putting a friggin' Band-Aid on a bullet wound. And it's
they have there's a difference with them because they have Crosby and Malkin, and they can sit back and they can get players to come to their team in the offseason because they have Crosby and Malkin.
True.
They're not an unattractive place to play hockey, so they can go. So I mean, they don't need it forever to turn around. They just need to kind of stop trying to just fix every little hole in the bucket and allow themselves to just develop a couple players. I mean, I know this should have happened a couple years ago now, but it's still not too late to do it.
They should have drafted more defensemen. Look, Ole Mata's a big success. Derek Pouliot doesn't look like he's a big success. That's the same draft. After that, they traded Harrington. That was a big mistake.
Yeah.
A big mistake.
But to your point, Ak, the problem is that if it was just Crosby and Malkin and you say if you build it they will come, that's one thing. But the problem is they also have Kessel at $7 million and Letang at 7.8 and Fleury at almost 6, I think. So there's so much salary there that it's taken up by that core group. They really can't afford to bring in those secondary complementary players unless they take discounts. And nobody is going to take a discount anymore.
But those players aren't old that you're talking about. None of them are. I mean, Letang is questionable with his health, for sure. Kessel, how old is Kessel?
28.
28, right. So, I mean, you look, I kind of look at this like, some of these teams we've seen in the past that could very easily have, you could still be 6 or 7 years from now, Kessel and Crosby could still be doing pretty well on that team. I mean, remember that we're living in an era, too, where players are going to play longer, and you're seeing it. Like good players can continue to play. I mean, Crosby Crosby isn't maybe is not the Sidney Crosby was when he came into the NHL. I mean, that's starting to look like that, but still, he's still a heck of a player.
I got to run, but my answer is if they don't bottom out this year and draft another really good defenseman, then you have to trade either Fleury or Malkin, one or the other. And they have guys that can replace Fleury, so that might have to be the way to go.
Yeah. Thanks, Russ. Appreciate
All right,
it.
see you guys.
We'll see you again. Yeah, I don't disagree. I honestly wonder, at the end of the day, Malkin's the better player right now than Crosby is, right? So,
sure.
But what is that really? And it's for a long time he's been, every bit. I mean, it's been the opposite. So, I mean, Crosby is not going to get traded. You're just not going to trade Crosby. So yeah, I've always felt that they should trade Malkin. I mean, and I think Malkin's a heck of a player, but I've always felt that.
Yeah, but now Pittsburgh is in a position that if they trade Malkin, it's going to be a deal where they're going to probably get 2 or 3 young NHL ready players rather than getting like a couple like superstar play. It's not going to be a hockey deal. It's not, but it's going to be more of a futures deal. And I don't know whether that's a deal that's really going to help that team. It'd be a step back to go a step forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
My thing went blank for a second there. My screen went blank.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. That's pretty amazing because I lost my internet completely and stayed on the line somehow. So yeah, I mean that's, Pittsburgh, we've talked a lot about them. This is a tough spot to be in. I don't know that Marc-Andre Fleury is the right goalie for their system. I've thought about that for a while,
But like we said when Kevin was on the show the last time, he's arguably been their MVP. So he's not the problem. The problem is, right now it's a problem, the fact that he's out for a week to 2 weeks, and Fleury standing on his head has barely kept him in the playoff race. And if you watch that game last night in Boston, they were not in that game at all. The only time I noticed Phil Kessel was when the Boston fans were booing him. So really,
different. You're right.
Okay, I lost you there for a sec.
I'm back now. You can hear me?
Okay, I lost you for a sec, but now you're back.
Okay, that was weird. Okay, yeah. So, no, I'm with you. Tuukka Rask was amazing last night too. The Penguins have played a couple good games and had no success in them. Against in the game before too, they had issues as well.
Against Washington, yeah.
Against Washington, they played well again, but you could sit there and say Marc-Andre Fleury is the most valuable player, and he has been good. But this is like when the Flyers say Steve Mason is their best player. Yeah, he is, but that doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't mean anything for your team. It doesn't help you. He's not letting in bad goals, but he's also not like stealing games. Carey Price is as the most valuable player. He steals games for you. Roberto Luongo is stealing games for Florida.
Well, I'll say this for Pittsburgh's fans' sakes. I hope that Russ is right in that Sidney Crosby is hurt, because if he's not hurt, I'm not saying he's done. I'm just saying that we've probably seen the last of the superstar Crosby. Now it'll be the good Crosby, but the good Crosby is not worth $9 million a year. And that's where teams get into trouble, is not the fact that these players aren't good anymore. It's whether they're worth the money they're being paid.
Right.
The whole thing with Steven Stamkos, he's 25 years old, and if he goes UFA next year, the debate in Toronto is Steven Stamkos good? Of course he's good. Is he worth $11 million a year? That's the question.
The problem is he's worth $11 million a year for the next couple years,
right.
But then you just don't know, So the issue is that the only way you can sign him though is by signing him to a long-term deal. So that takes you into this this circle, and that's why teams know. Teams are well aware of the fact that they don't want to give these long contracts out either, but they have to, because they're going to lose the player otherwise of another team.
Right.
And they know that. That stuff. So, and just bring up something I wanted to talk about, which I blogged about today, and I'm going to be blogging about more. I've been spending a little bit of time talking to some general managers and some people, agents, and some people around the NHL teams about the whole fact that, that we haven't had any trades, and what's going on exactly, and what can we do to fix it? Like, is there a way to fix this? Is it fixable, or is this our destiny from now on to have, less trades, or have more trades at the draft? And have the trade deadline just be really nothing, like nothing important. And we don't want that, because for Hockey Buzz. But besides that, the NHL doesn't want that because the trade deadline and the excitement leading up. I mean, there's a reason Hockey Buzz is successful. This is something that people love. Like people love this kind of talk, and it'll always be there. The talk will always be there because the less trades there are, like I've always said, until a player gets traded, he's a rumor. Once he gets traded, he's not a rumor. And then, so it's more interesting always to follow these things. Once a player gets traded, there's no longer anything to talk about. So,
well, I mean, one thing that's encouraging, and then I want you to continue on what you wrote about, is that this year, this trade deadline, you do have prominent UFAs. And, I think the deadline is 90% rental deals.
Yeah.
But this year we have Bufflin. We have probably Stahl. We possibly have a Kopitar or Stamkos, although I don't think they're both staying with their respective teams until next season, until the summer. But you have a lot of UFAs, so I think this deadline, there will be a lot of deals that'll pick up. Then there are enough UFAs that'll make things interesting. But yeah, there are no limitations during the summer. There are no limitations on the cap during near the draft. So that's why that's become the new deadline.
Yeah, and it doesn't really help anybody. It doesn't prove it. I mean, it doesn't help the players. It doesn't help the teams either. So that's why I came up with a bunch of concepts. And the first one I'm going to bounce off is some of them I've given before, and we'll talk about them as we go on the next couple of weeks. But because I'm working on the rumor chart. It's really hard to do this year, but it's it's still a lot. The more people I talk to, the more I realize there still are going to be a lot of things going on, like you're saying there. There are UFAs. There are teams that don't want to lose players for nothing. There are teams though that are starting more and more to prescribe to Kevin Allen's theory that you never lose a player for nothing, which is always interesting how you get that player's cap space, that player that turns into a player at some point, which is true.
Yes.
If you do the right things with it. And the Stamkos thing, of course, has been more and more. You're hearing Bob McKenzie come out and say it's probably not going back to Tampa, and I think that's I'm not going to ever question Bob McKenzie. He's the best, but I think it's too early still for it. I think this thing is still. I think all we can do right now, it's kind of like talking about the lockout the year before. It's like until the moment comes for Stamkos to decide what he really wants to do.
I listened to McKenzie's analysis of the situation, and I buy into this in one way, because Newport Sports is not saying anything, Tampa is not saying anything, Stamkos is not saying anything. But if the looking at the body language of that situation as opposed to what's going on with Kopitar and the Kings, there have been rumors about them being close. Doesn't he's not going to be traded at the deadline because they're having a very good year. It appears that both sides want to get a deal. It's just a question of money. With Stamkos, the body language is completely different. There is the reported animosity between him and Cooper. There's him playing the wing. There's the possibility of him going home to Toronto or going someplace like Montreal or other places that might be a fit for him being winning a Stanley Cup, having a better chance of winning the Stanley Cup than in Tampa. He's reading the tea leaves and looking at the body language of the situation and seeing that it does not look good for Stamkos staying there. Now, he didn't say it's 100% that it's not, things couldn't turn around, but it doesn't look, it seems more consistent with him, not waiving his no move clause, maybe, and now the thing is, I'm interviewing Bill Waters tomorrow for I do it monthly for my column, and he was on a Toronto radio station and said that he had heard that the Tampa Bay was going to make it basically a make it or leave it offer to Stamkos before the deadline, and if he says that he's going to wait until the summer, then they would ask him for a list. So maybe there's a possibility that he gets shipped someplace at the deadline, but I don't see him waiving his no move clause because I think he wants to make the playoffs and go someplace with the Lightning and then see what the market bears.
Yeah. I think what Bill's saying there could very well be accurate and still doesn't mean anything. I don't mean that in terms of the fact that, okay, they ask him for a list. He doesn't have to give them a list. He doesn't. So the fact of the matter is, what is that? What by doing that, really, they're just pissing him off. So I don't think they'll do that. I don't think that it doesn't really make any sense for them to do that. It really, when it comes down to it, I mean, there aren't that many teams that can do it. It's not like you. I mean, he could give them a list that would be like that would eliminate him from being able to be traded because there's some teams that just can't pick up. So to me, that's not the way it happens. To me, it happens like they might do a big offer before the trade deadline, and that would be the right thing to do. And they might do that way before the trade deadline. I've heard they could do that even sooner than later. But and then and Stamkos is not. There's nothing really on Stamkos to take the first offer because this is a big that's why I kind of compare it to like the lockout, until push comes to shove. I don't think anything's going to happen here. Like I think this is going to come to, in my opinion, until I've talked to people who agree with this, he's going to go free agent on July 1st. And that doesn't mean he's going to leave Tampa, but he's going to see what's out there. Mm-hmm. He's going to get a perspective of what's out there at least. And then decide, because Tampa, they're still a contender here. They're going to try to make a run. They don't want you're better off with him than anybody you get for him. Right. So you might as well keep him around. It matters in Tampa how many rounds they go in the playoffs. It's a big deal to them. So they want to make the money back. I mean, the contract they can offer him is bigger if they go longer in the playoffs. I think that. I think it's going to come down to July 1st. I don't think he'll ever be traded. Because I don't think there's going to come a point when he's going to be so pissed off at them. I don't see that coming. I think Yzerman is too smart to do that, to let it get to that. Yzerman knows this, knows how these things work too. I mean, he was a player. He knows what being a superstar player is like.
Well, the only way they ask him for a list is if they know that for sure, 100%, that they're not going to pay what he's looking for, and if they think he's going to go free agent, that they're going to lose him, not lose him for nothing, right, in the sense that, but lose him and not get a return in terms of players or prospects. I mean,
but why would he even give them a list? I mean, think about it. Like he doesn't have to.
He's got a no move if he wants to.
No, but he doesn't have to. That's the thing. And I mean, by him giving him a list, he instantly, yeah. What happens? I mean, they say, okay, I'm willing to go here, here, and here. Still, no team's going to trade for him unless they know what they're going to pay for him later. So anything that happens to me has to happen on July 1st. I mean, I could see Tampa saying, okay, you can talk to his agent and all that ahead of time. And maybe something happens then. But even then, if you're Stamkos, why would you let that happen too? Because think about it. Like if you're Stamkos, you're going to another team. You don't want that team to be depleted. They're going to be depleted. They're going to have to give up a lot to get you. So why wouldn't you just sign with another team on July 1st,
But I mean, if it's a team like Montreal or a team like the Islanders who think that they're Stamkos away from winning the Stanley Cup, I mean, Montreal has the cap room to take on a salary, but I don't know if they have the prospect, whether they want to give up the prospects that would be necessary to get Stamkos and have him as a pure rental. Now, you can make the case that, Montreal has the cap room to be able to sign him long-term, but who knows if he wants to go to Montreal? That's why I think you're right.
If you're trading for Stamkos, you're giving up so much. It's not going to make you a better team.
But I mean, if you're trading futures that can't help you enough now, but can help that team down the road, and he's a now player, then it helps them more than having Nathan Beaulieu and Jared Tenorti. I'm just throwing out names of prospects.
I mean, the only reason you do this, okay, is to keep him out of a bidding war. Right. So you go out there and you trade for him so that you're the only team that can negotiate with him. Right. And that enables you some power. But even then, I mean, we're talking about Donnie Meehan's one of his biggest clients. We're talking about an agent who loves to negotiate. They're talking about, the agent that brought us, such fun times as,
Brad Richards.
As Brad Richards.
Well, that was my point with this situation. Brad Richards had a no move, I believe. Mm-hmm. A full no move, no trade.
Yep.
In his contract. He was having a good year with Dallas that year before free agency. He could have waived that to get traded to the Rangers. I remember we were reporting, and a lot of people were reporting that was a possibility. Yep. And what was the point of doing that if he was going to sign with the Rangers anyway? So he saved the Rangers having to trade prospects to get him. But I don't think that Newport Sports is going to advise their client to say, okay, go someplace. His value is already established. It's Steven Stamkos. He's a Rocket Richard Trophy winner. He's would have made the Olympic team.
And he's 26 years old. So, I mean, he's really he's really cheap. And, I mean, the difference with Richards was there was a specific team he really wanted to go to. And I don't get that sense with Stamkos. Like, I mean, talking to people around, I don't get – I mean, there's a I mean, yes, you can talk about the Maple Leafs, but and him wanting to play there. You can also, I mean, people have also been talking about Montreal, because PK Subban's a friend of his, and you can talk, they grew up together, and I mean, and you can talk about numerous other teams that have more money and less spotlight than that he might. He's lived without the spotlight for a while. He likes that. Perhaps, we don't know really deep down what he wants. If he wants the challenge, some players are like, I'm going to be the guy who's going to turn the Maple Leafs into a Stanley Cup champion. That might be him. But I haven't gotten the impression that that's him from anything so far. I mean, so what we have at this point is like, okay, he has 29 teams that are going to be interested in him. And,
Sure.
After Tampa says they can't afford him. And even then, I think he goes back to Tampa and get with his best offer and says, can you match this? I still think that could happen. So,
yeah, but that's where I think Mackenzie is right. I think that if he gets an offer from some team that is close to what people think, which is 10 and a half, $11 million on a 7-year deal, there's no way that Tampa matches that, because then they have to peel off 2 or 3 players.
No, you're right. You're right. I think that's true. But I still think he gives him a chance to. And
I think so.
I think at the end of the day, he wants to stay in Tampa for the most money he can. I really think that's where he wants to be. But he realizes that might not be an option because of Tampa.
The funny thing is, Zach, over the last few days, there were rumors that, he's going to stay in Tampa because his parents moved to Tampa, just bought a home down there, all this stuff. It's all a lie. His parents are still living in suburban Toronto. I guess he doesn't have a home in Tampa. He rents a condo. He has a home in Aurora, Ontario. So there's nothing like in terms other than, the Florida sun, the taxes, and the fact that he may want to stay there, that's keeping him in Florida. So I don't think that there are those tentacles there that are holding him down.
No, but there is the fact that this is all he's known, right? And this is and as a young player, he's had a lot of he's a lot of success there. He likes the situation, he likes the team. He doesn't dislike Cooper. I think what goes on with Cooper is like the crazy thing. Yeah, he's playing him in different positions. If this wasn't a contract year, would that even matter? I mean, Stamkos is Voracek's playing the left wing now, in Philly. I mean, no one's really talking about that as like, oh my gosh, Voracek's going to leave. He must hate the coach. No, they're just saying, okay, they need a left wing, so they're putting him on the left wing. I mean, does this really matter that, this whole Cooper thing, I think is as trite and contrived as the parents thing, When I heard the parents thing, I just like, well, I remember the Seinfeld joke, which I wrote about, which is that, my parents are old people. They're moving to Florida because it's the law, It doesn't necessarily mean that they want to live in Tampa near him. I mean,
it wouldn't be a big deal if he apparently hasn't made it a big deal, because he likes his natural position as center. He likes playing center. He doesn't feel comfortable on the wing. He's played the wing most of the last few weeks. They moved him to center for the game in Toronto, and I think for one game before that. He hasn't scored a goal in 10 games. That sort of corresponds with him being moved to the wing.
It also corresponds with the attitude he's taken, which is frustration. Like, and it's just like, to me, it's not like this is a hockey player who's frustrated. And yeah, he's going to say, I'd rather play center, but it's not. At the end of the day, Stamkos is also the guy who will tell you that I will play goalie if he wants me to, because I'll do whatever it takes to win. He's not the kind of player who would normally complain about his position. Right. I think all this stuff is getting to him. I think that there's no question about that. He looked like a different kind of player the other night in Toronto. He did not look like himself. I watched that game. I just think that he doesn't have, this is definitely getting to him. And if there's any, reason to sign him now, if you're Tampa, it's that, that this is starting to affect him. Now, they could sign him long-term and he could still have just as bad a rest of the year as he's having right now. So they don't know that, right? So there's a whole bunch of issues there. And I think at the end of the day that, since he holds so many cards and since Don Meehan's in charge of this, I don't think there's any sense that this is going to get done before July 1st. And I don't think he's going to get moved. And I don't think they're moving his rights for anything specific at the draft. I
think they could do that, because I think they could do that within the that 5-day negotiating window. If he goes back, first of all, he's a good kid, and a good citizen and everything. Yeah. And I'm sure he holds the Tampa Bay Lightning organization in high regard. If there's an opportunity for him, like he tells them, well, I'm going to go to Toronto. So if you want to try to make it, if you want to make a deal to get something back for my negotiating rights, they would be amenable to doing that.
But why? But what? Because if you're Stamkos, why would you, if you're going to Toronto, a team that already has hardly anything to give up, because why would you go to make the team you're going to even worse?
Because Toronto, I think actually Toronto would want to do it as well, because Toronto is intent on moving out players from that roster.
Well, but those kind of players are not going to be what's going to get you Stamkos's rights. I mean, you're going to have to do something very significant, even just to get his rights, even just to have the ability to negotiate with him ahead of time. Maybe because of the 5-day period or whatever, that's not going to be the case. But in the past, that was the case, right? So in the past, but I don't think Tampa's going to get anything for him. I really don't think that. Okay. I don't think there's going to be a trade. I just don't. Because I don't see the way. I know the way Donnie Meehan works very well. And the way he works is that there is no reason for him to do Tampa a favor here in any shape. And Stamkos, although he doesn't want Tampa to get screwed. He's at the same time, I think that he's going to listen to his agent, because this is such a big contract. This sets up his family and future family generations to come. So he's going to have to listen to that, so that's, I'm sure we're going to talk about it again.
Yes.
That's all I can say. That's the one thing I can be sure of, is that we're going to have more discussions about Steven Stamkos before we're done covering hockey. But there's no question about that. Before we go, I did want to show this. This is really funny. This is a Mites on Ice fight that broke out. Do you see this? This is really good.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it up here because I think this is the best way to do this. So I'm going to put. So here you go. You can see that pretty well. Yep. All right. Yep. So this is a Mites on Ice thing. I'll move this over so it just stays on me throughout this. All right, so here we go. Mites on Ice. This is I keep talking too. So this is at the end of like a Mites on Ice thing in between the second period, and suddenly it's just it just turns into a fight. Like the players dropping gloves on both sides. Now watch the mascot. Like the mascot comes in, breaking it up, which is awesome. The mascot's carries a player off. It's just like, it's insane.
It's Piastani, 1987.
So what does this say to us? What does this prove to us? Or what are we thinking here? Why does this happen? I'm going to ask you, America, why, and Canada, and anywhere else you are, why is this happening? This is a perfect example of nature versus nurture, right? Like we have, what is hockey fighting? Is hockey fighting something that's just, is fighting just something that's born into hockey, or something that kids learn because they watch it? These kids have never watched a bench clearing brawl. Okay, these kids are like this age. They've never seen it because it hasn't happened, and they're seeing very few fights. So this just proves that hockey and fighting are nature, not nurture. So that fighting is part of hockey and should always be part of hockey, because it just naturally occurs even with children.
You're preaching to the choir.
There you go. Not that I don't think it will be banned at some point, but I'm just saying that. I don't want it banned, but I'm just saying that this shows that hockey and fighting hand in hand. Don't fight, kids. Stay in school. Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow. Enjoy Star Wars. I know Mike will. Whatever you do, don't tell him what happened.